Welcome to the Supper Talk podcast where we have all those conversations you don't want to have with your family. I'm Steve, and this is my son Chris.
Hello.
Today we're going to solve all of the world's problems by tackling ethics in America.
And in tackling this, we're really just going to discover that there's more problems than what we can solve. The world is on fire. Bitch, calm down.
Yeah, your shirt. I noticed that. That's your first shirt from that endeavor, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm a little bit excited about it because I got it on Monday and I started wearing it yesterday, and then I did on Wednesdays I do a live stream on TikTok, and I kind of just talk about AI and what it is that I'm doing for a bunch of people, and I had so many people today are like, I want that shirt. How do I get that shirt? It's like, oh no, I made this for me, and now I think I might actually have to start a fashion line.
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea. And you used AI to create the graphic, right?
Yeah, so I used AI to create the graphic, but here I've been having a couple of conversations with people ever since I've started this whole consultancy thing, and I'm realizing, everybody has different comfort levels of how they like to see AI, and I was having a conversation yesterday when I went and got my hair cut with one of the barbers out at the barber college, and he was asking like, what are the downsides of AI? And I said, honestly, lazy people. Lazy people are going to be the downside of AI because you're going to have a lot of people that just go for low hanging fruit and put zero effort into it. And then you're going to have a thing that aggregates all of the internet and it'll just give you aggregate art. And I think aggregate art is probably why so many creative people hate the concept of AI. But if you're not lazy about it and you put forth a specific style, you have a specific theme, you really work with it to make something that is unique, I think this is one of the cool things that you can do with it is you can really make an idea become a physical product in no time at all. Sticker Mule is the website that I used, and I'll be really honest. This is a great sample shirt. It is a fantastic. I got this for me, or if I wanted to make this for you, it's perfect for that. And that's really all that I was going for. But as somebody who owns a business, I know that there are other manufacturers that if I did things in bulk and actually like carried a retail inventory, I would get much better quality shirts. But for now, I made something out of nothing, and that's AI. That's what I think is really cool about it.
Yeah, and it's so funny. You don't really think about it, but the difference between goodness gracious, there's a race going on outside, but they quality T-shirts are way more comfortable to wear than a cheap T-shirt.
100% of the time.
Yeah,
100% of the time. Like most of the shirts that I get are not the Gildans, and I think that that's where I disagreed with the shop owner of the barber shop that I first landed in outside of school. He was always talking about how he wanted to have the shirt for the working man, and you want to go out and you want to be able to wear this shirt when you're out mowing the lawn, or you want to wear this shirt when you're doing construction, so that way you're out and about and you're showing it. And I was like, that's not people showing those shirts. Like and nobody wants to live in those shirts. They have to survive in those shirts. So they're doing hard work and they're sweating and they're beating it up and they're just going to dispose of those shirts. But if you have that nice shirt, that really soft thing that you love being in that fits you really well, you will show that shirt off. That'll be your favorite shirt. And that's more of where my mentality goes is give me those soft tri blends. Don't give me 100% cotton.
yeah, and I think that uh, I could be wrong on this, but I think that the American made sentiment in the U.S. is growing, and that so it's like they've got those smokeless fire pits that are made by a company called Solo.
Hmm.
They're a great fire pits.
My buddy Josh has one. They're fantastic.
Yeah, there's but they just sent out a notice that all of their prices are going
Yep.
way up, because the steel is manufactured in China, the products are manufactured in China. They're so literally, if you buy a Solo stove, it comes to you in the box that it's going to your house uh, from China. So everything about the company is done in China. The only thing that's not done in China is the ownership and
Yeah.
the
The
the headquarters.
marketing, the organization, and the people behind the front of the company that are actually making the money.
But there's another company. Oh man, I should have looked this up. There's a
Is it an American made company? Because I've seen like three companies pop up just in the last 2 weeks that are other Chinese manufactured product that it's basically reverse engineered to the exact same thing and it's a fraction of the price of what Solo is charging? Or is it more of an American made company that is like, hey, if that's what the charges with the tariffs are, here's a better quality product?
yeah, it's a company called Brio, um, and they make fire pits just that are like that, but uh, they're made in America, and their commercial is kind of funny. So they've got a guy with a blower, a leaf blower, and
Yeah.
he's blowing it around on a patio, and he blows a Solo stove from one side of the patio to the other
Hey,
because it's so
I've
light.
seen that commercial. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm looking at their website right now. One of the things that their marketing does so much better than Solo stuff does is they're showing the idea of like, look, you can cook on an open fire, and that is smart marketing because that is an American value. Like going out camping, going out into the outdoors, having a backyard barbecue. They are selling American values in this commercial that I'm looking at right now because it's like you've got a tomahawk steak that's getting flipped. You've got a bunch of people in their backyards. You've got that flat grill over the top of it. They're putting bricks in the oven so that way they can do hot iron bricks over it. And these things are massive too.
yeah, and it's one of those things that apparently they're a better value. Apparently they're cheaper than less expensive than the Solo stoves as well. But uh, but I mean, there's and maybe that ends up being a thing, with the tariffs, where products that are made in the U.S. could potentially be less expensive than products that are imported, particularly from countries like China, uh, if we keep tariffs at a rate that makes it difficult for people to buy stuff from China. But we just had the deal that they just announced. One of the most important parts of that deal that I saw was uh, there's a uh, there's a loophole called de minimis.
Yeah, it's like anything under $800 doesn't have to get the tariffs. And now there's a lot of like shoe manufacturers that are getting like one-off shoes made because it's all drop shipped directly to consumers. And I think it used to be $800 and it dropped down to $300. But this is how like Temu and Shein are able to get things to consumers so quickly without the tariffs is because, oh, it's under this value, so we can just ship it to them. And now that's going to go away too.
Yeah, and I think it's I just bought a little case for my mouse, so I can put my mouse in the case and throw it in my bag, and use it when I'm on my laptop at a coffee shop or whatever.
And take your
Um,
monster 3 monitor laptop setup out into the world with you.
there's I tell you, I've become so spoiled with multi-monitor setups, and this setup that I've got now. where I've got two large screen monitors on left and right, and then in the center I've got another large screen monitor, but it's not horizontal; it's vertical.
Yeah.
So so I write. That's what I predominantly do is I write, and having that vertical monitor makes it so much easier to write. And so like um and I always use references, so it allows me to have my references up on the side, and like at the very bottom. So I'll put the document I'm writing is the top 2/3 of my monitor, but the bottom 1/3 is the instructions for my assignment. So I'm always writing to what the grade. And oh yeah, I got my grades from last term. So I got a
You told
97
me the
in
one
both.
was perfect. What was the other one?
Oh well, it wasn't perfect. I got a perfect score on my paper, but I ended
Okay.
up with a 97 in both of my classes. So I got a 97 in Greek, or I'm sorry, Hebrew, and I got a 97 in my hermeneutics class. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, and I was good. I haven't checked, but I was gonna see what I got for the whole semester because I think I might have pulled a 97. Maybe that was my number, my standard for last semester. I think I got a 97 in all four of my classes.
That's I've always told people I don't want to be the best, I just want to be up there. And like 97's a good goal to be around. It's like not all eyes are on you, but you're good.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that uh, you know they the standards are written and they're very clear. It's you look at the rubric for every assignment, and it's like if you do this, you're going to get this between these. This is the range of points you're going to get, and if you do this, then you're only going to get these points. So you know what you've got to do in order to be in the top bracket at least,
Yeah.
and then it's just a matter of it's like, oh well, if they tell you that you've got to have between um, you know, uh, 5,500 and 7,500 words. Well, if you're at 5,500 words, then you're probably going to be, unless you're just adding words to add words. But the closer you are to the upper range of the word count, the higher your score is going to be.
Okay.
Um, and same thing with like numbers of references. And it's so cool because like I've got an AI tool that's part of the library system that I have for my electronic books because I've got a huge library of electronic books. I've got like 7,600 ebooks.
That's what you're saying is that with your schooling curriculum, you just have access to their entire library.
No, these are books that
Or are
that
these
I've
yours?
they're mine. They're my books that I've accumulated over the years. It's one of the things I've been doing uh with um the stipend I get for while I'm in school is I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to use that to buy books. Because again, I mean, there's the whole idea behind, uh, doing theology work is you've just got to have access to that kind of information. And I get
Okay.
access
So
to a
you're
lot of stuff through my library. And even as an alumni, I'll have access to my library for the rest of my life, which is awesome.
So your alumni library is separate from your personal library, and your personal library is supplementing some of the things that you can't get from your alumni library, and you're using your stipend to just build up your knowledge base then?
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
like but one of the interesting things about this AI tool is I can have all my books that I'm using for a particular class open on a layout, and that layout is saved. So I can search, and when I do, they call it a smart search. It's really kind of a dumb AI as AIs go, but it's a smart search. Um, So, but it'll only search those open books. So it's one of those things that it's like, um, you, you're required to, frequently cite the textbooks for the class. And if I just go to, Perplexity, my AI, and I use the internet, then I'm going to find all kinds of resources about that particular matter. But but if I use only my textbooks, then I'm going to cite my textbooks more frequently.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a game, I mean, it's just like, economics is a game and business is a game. Everything's a game, and the
And
more
it figuring out how to play it the right way to get as far as you possibly can.
yeah, there's so yeah. Anyways, well, I was really happy with my grades for this last term. Um,
It's interesting the way that you organize your screen because like everything that you talk about with being able to have things here and here. When I did the ultra wide monitor setup, it's the exact same thing for me because I have every single window just like this is my base station now. I have my Riverside up over here. I've got my ChatGPT right here. I've got Safari. I've got my news. I've got my iMessage off in the corner. So that way, if I'm actually texting you, I'm just doing it at the computer. And I love that I have this area to focus on this and this and this. And even the webcam, like it's in front of my screen, but I only ever use this tiny portion of the screen for the webcasts and any kind of like video conferencing or the podcast. So the rest of the space is just very clean, neat, right where I want it to be. But I've kind of known like, okay, I'm looking over here, I'm looking over here, and it just helps me multitask a little bit more. I can't stand the bevels in between the monitors and just not having that seamless transition because I'm the person that will kind of move and angle things around, and then all of a sudden like I'll have my mouse go from here, and then as soon as it crosses the screen it's down here. Drives me up the wall. I can't handle it. It's the tiniest inconvenience, and that's my level of privilege. I just can't handle that mouse cursor just going 2 pixels down. So I've got my ultra wide.
yeah, and it's so funny because if you the way that you set your displays up in the Mac, I mean, you can be really, really, if like your one monitor is an inch taller than your other monitor, you can
Uh,
set it up exactly like that. But it's so frustrating when you're going from one monitor to the other monitor and you like run into the wall, and you're like, oh man, you got to go up a little bit and then move to the right or whatever.
I once made the mistake of plugging in the DisplayPort cable as well as an HDMI cable, trying to figure out which one was which. And my Mac thought that I had a dual monitor display, but it was feeding it to the exact same monitor. So I was like, I have no idea where I'm at right now. So I obviously pulled a plug. That fixed that.
I had when I was working in the an the that Transportation Security Operations Center. So it was a national operations center at a at a at a building outside of Washington D.C. And so everybody who was in the building had three monitor setups that we were looking at, but our center monitor was mirrored onto a TV that was above us, but it was facing everybody else. So if I needed to get somebody's attention and I wanted to show them what I was working on, I could just put it in my center monitor, and that way everybody in the entire center can see exactly what I'm seeing on my screen. So there's
How
anyway,
many times did that go bad?
I had a buddy who accidentally he um he was going to the White House website. You mentioned the White House website earlier in a text message, but uh, he accidentally typed in whitehouse.com, instead of whitehouse.gov. And I don't know if they fixed it because I just haven't gone to there. But at the time, this was during the I it was either the
It would have been
second,
Bush, I would imagine.
yeah, I think it was the second Bush's term, and whitehouse.com was a porn site. So you know, you go to those porn sites, and then there's just all of a sudden there's all these pop-ups, and it's like pop 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 pop. So he's sitting there, and and everybody's like looking at him like, what on earth are you doing?
He's just like, oh no, what's going on?
Yeah, he was so panicked, and it's like I remember when we were in Hawaii, I was at my desk, and they I got hit somehow with a virus, and the virus was sending out, it was self-replicating, so it was sending out emails to everybody in my address book. But because I was set up on the network, um, it was sending in messages out 50 people at a time to like the entire organization, the whole, U.S. Army Pacific.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm sitting there, and I just started hearing this ping, 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 and it was the little noise that you get when you send an email, and it was just going over and over and over again because it could only send 50 messages at a time, and I quickly realized what was going on, so I'm like, how am I going to stop this thing? So I had the wherewithal to just reach behind my computer and unplug the entire thing. There's because I mean there was no way. It was like there was no way for me to shut it off.
I on the opposite scale of that, I used to prank people into thinking things were going wrong with their computers when I worked in the corporate world. So I think that you're probably familiar with the device that some hackers will use called a keylogger.
Yeah,
Uh, for listeners who don't know what a keylogger is it's a device that you plug into a computer and it will log every keystroke and every mouse click and everything that you're doing. And it's largely used to be able to capture credit card information and personal identifiable information. And IT departments do not like those, very obviously. And because those things exist, that's usually one of the reasons why most IT departments in most corporations have a no external USBs are allowed in our company's products ever policy. And I didn't really care. So I had found this tool called a phantom keystroker, as opposed to a key logger. And the keystroker was just a menace tool. It was phenomenal. What it would do is at random intervals, it would just type random things and it would move your mouse around for you. So I would go to supervisors' desks when I knew that they weren't there, plug this little thing in the back of their computer when I knew that they were doing all of their coaching documentation for the day. And then they would be typing, oh, such and such is working on this, da da da, I've gave the feedback on XYZ. And then all of a sudden, an entire story about a unicorn pooping would just show up. Or they'd be in the middle of doing quality monitors and their mouse would move, click into the screen, and it would just pause everything. So then they would call my department, and I worked in a support staff role that worked closely with IT, but I was not part of IT. And they'd be like, hey, are the guys in IT in? Like, I'm having all these weird problems with my computer. I don't know. Let me come check out and see if I can figure it out for you. I'd take it out before IT would go find it. Eventually, IT found it. And then I had a nice talking to. So I definitely do not suggest that to anybody else.
we had a guy who was he was a real hunting pecker when he would type. I mean, he could only type. He typed very, very slowly, very, very deliberately, and he had to like stare at the keyboard. And
Yeah.
he was this kind of a person, one finger, and uh, there's so I I split I replaced a key, so I moved his keys around so that so he would be hitting. So he's looking for the M, and he would find the M on his keyboard, but it wasn't an M; it was a T. There's and he's like, "What the what?" There's and he was so frustrated. You could hear him in his office. He'd be screaming and hollering. I'm like, maybe I need to put those back.
So there was a the same company that I was working for. I just liked mischief, and I was the guy that would just create pranks for everyone because I really do believe in there's this thing called the fish philosophy, and it's based out of the Pike's Marketplace fish market in Seattle. You've got in the 70s a bunch of guys that just are selling fish. So, how do they market themselves? They start throwing fish at one another and they start catching fish, and then they throw fish at customers, and customers catch fish and then throw them back. And it's all about engage with your clients, have fun, make it this really haha experience that brings people in. And I really did believe in this, and it's the reason that I had the reputation that followed me. So I found this device called the Annoyatron, and the Annoyatron is the greatest invention in the world. It is so fantastic. It is this little 2-inch circuit board by 1 inch. And all that it has on it is a toggle switch, a speaker, a battery, and a magnet. And the toggle switch goes from low, high, random. So there's that ultra high frequency mosquito buzz sound that people absolutely hate because it's that sound that electronics make when they're going all weird. It had two different frequencies that it would do or and it would go off at random intervals between 30 seconds and 30 minutes. And it was just without any kind of metronome that would allow you to anticipate what was happening. So it's small enough that you can hide it. And the battery would last for months. So we had these kind of cubicles where it's all just take it apart and you could pop off the top, put an Annoyatron in, put the top back on, and you are like literally within 6 inches of somebody's ear. And because it's a UHF sound, people who are 10 feet away from it can't hear it. But people who are right there hear it plain as day. So I remember I was working a shift where I had Wednesdays and Thursdays off, and my boss's boss's boss worked right next to me. We had kind of this little square open office area that was in the middle of the call center, and then just outside of the square were three separate desks for my boss, my boss's boss, and my boss's boss's boss. So Tuesday night, my boss has gone out for the day. He's done, and I wait for the rest of the leadership team to leave, and I go to his desk and find the one spot that I know he will never hear whatsoever. It's like behind something underneath a like it's just an inconvenient space. There's nothing that pops out. It's just an inconvenient space that's a couple inches away from his ear. And then I left. I just left for the weekend. And I took Wednesday off, took Thursday off, came back Friday. So Friday, I'd forgotten about doing this already. And I'd done enough pranks that I'm like, ah, ha, ha, this is a harmless little prank. This will be funny. So for context, my boss's boss's boss was one of the most polite, nice Mormon men I have ever met in my life. Really, really nice guy. And I come back And as soon as I sit down on Friday, within the first half hour of me sitting down, I hear the beep. And then I see his face just like absolutely defeated, like, so for the prior 48 hours, it would go off. And then he would ask my boss and my boss's boss, "Did you guys hear that?" "No, what are you talking about?" So then all day long, "You guys, I swear I'm hearing things." So on Thursday, he had IT come and take a look at his computer. They replaced his entire computer. They replaced his entire electronics at his desk. And he was like, "I'm going insane." So I come in on Friday, hear this first beep, and I was like, "Oh, you didn't find it?" And this really nice, polite Mormon guy is like, "What the fuck did you do?" And I go over and I just grab it and I show it to him. I was like, "Isn't this the greatest thing in the world?" And he takes it from me and just snaps it in half. Best $10 I've ever spent.
The I have a similar story. When we were living in Dahlonega in the mountains of North Georgia, the I worked at a camp that was like literally right at the foot of the Chattahoochee National Forest. It was a beautiful, beautiful place, and we
This
had
Camp Merrill?
yeah,
Okay.
there's and we had an agreement, kind of a handshake agreement with the um uh, Fish and Wildlife Service because they had a fish hatchery that was near where our camp was. So they would come and they would bring a pickup truck filled with fish from the hatchery, and they would just dump them into the creek where we would teach mountaineering. So we had this creek that was there that we could always go fishing in. So that's what there's we went fishing all the time, all the time. And I didn't do it. I was well, okay. Well, I was kind of party to it, but so we took a fish. We had a fish, an extra fish, and it was this big steel army desk that our commander had, really big steel army desk, and it had a center drawer, top center drawer that you pulled in and out, and but that drawer wasn't quite as long as the desk, so there was like dead space behind the drawer, up against the top of the desk. So we taped the dead fish to the underside of his desk.
But not you. You were only party two. You weren't the party of.
Yeah, and so anyway, there's it was hilarious because he was smelling this fish, so he's like looking in his lunchbox and he's looking in his trash, and he starts cleaning off his desk, and then he'd be working, and then he's like goes into the cleaning closet and gets a mop and a bucket, and he like mops his entire floor, and he just because
At
he
least he's
couldn't figure.
diligent about it.
Yeah, he's just trying to figure out that he's like, man, smells like dead fish in my office, and I can't figure it out. And the only reason he found it, because he even looked underneath his desk, he looked at it, but he couldn't see it because it was behind the drawer.
Yeah.
And the only reason he found it is because as it continued to rot, it started to drip. So he looked under his desk, and there was like all this fish
The
juice,
slime and juice.
yeah,
Oh.
in a little puddle. And he's like, wait, where's that coming from? And he looks underneath it, and there's a dead fish paste taped to the underside of his desk. It was pretty funny.
How long did it take before he found it?
It was a few days. It was yeah, it was a few days. It stunk too.
Good old pranking. We can't do that nowadays. We like there's a really stupid trend on TikTok that happened last year, and it's the Kool-Aid Man prank. And it's just these kids that are running through fences, like vinyl fences and wooden fences, and they're just screaming, "Oh yeah!" And I see this whole thing, and I'm like, man, that would probably have been a lot of fun when I was growing up. But I live in Idaho, and I know what's in my house, and I know what would happen if somebody came crashing through my fence. That wouldn't be a good result for that child whatsoever. And now people can't take jokes because they're like me.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's an armed society is a polite society.
Right, right, very much. I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today about like, yeah, just remember, the reason we don't have a whole lot of crime in Idaho is because a lot of people are worried about immediate repercussions. They're not worried about cops. They're worried about immediate repercussions. What are you drinking today? I don't have a beer. I'm out of beer. I have Hoplark sparkling water, which is just for the Sabro hops.
So I've got an after shift, and the after shift is a collaboration of five chefs who worked with Athletic to make the beer, and it supports mental health for people in the culinary industry.
That's cool. I
So
wish that I could support mental health for people in the culinary industry, Idaho.
there's because I mean, and it's not just the well, it's the whole culinary industry. But when I was working in a restaurant here, getting an after shift beer is kind of like a tip, I guess.
Yeah.
There's so everybody gets when you're done with your shift, you get a free after shift beer.
That's one of the things that I really like about there's a brewery that we started going to here in town because they have a pretty good whoa there. They've got a pretty good trivia night and they've got some really good pub grub and they've got a couple NAs. But it's one of the things that we see on the menu of like buy the back of the house six pack. And you can just add that onto your tab so that way you can kind of tip everybody out for the work that they did. And I think that it's a really cool practice that I've seen in a handful of breweries and just brew pubs.
Yeah, and there's it's what it's a it might not seem like a big benefit, but getting a free
After a
beer at
long
the end of your
day.
yeah, there's and it it's kind of cool because like there's you get to sit down and like just chill out and drink a beer and talk with uh and I think usually, at least I know I did, there's a because we got discounted beers above and beyond the shift beer. So, I'd sit there and drink 3, 4 beers after work and just talk with the bartender or whatever.
Uh, Going back to the TikTok trends that are going on, you're not on social media as much as I am, so you haven't been seeing what's going on with the national parks, have you?
Well, I may know what's going on just because uh, I live in Colorado. We got a lot of national parks. And what at least what's the big thing that's in the news here is you have to get a reservation now
Mm-hmm.
for and it's a time. So you've got to show up at the gate at a particular time in
Yep.
order to get into the park.
So this is much like Bitch Calm Down is Gen Z marketing. I'm going to do something pretty extreme because Gen Z doesn't care about it, and that's what I'm leaning in towards. That is what all of the national parks social media managers are doing right now is let's do some unhinged content for Gen Z to get the attention on the national parks that have recently been defunded. And I I cannot begin to say this is awesome This is fantastic. I support 100% of this and all the attention that the national parks are getting. I hope that they can figure out a way to monetize this because I don't necessarily want to see national parks get overwhelmed by people going and not having the ranger support that's necessary. But it is the most thirst trap videos I have ever seen that are beyond explicit, and it's hilarious. It's like the Cardi B wet ass pussy song to a waterfall. It, it's this thirst trap OnlyFans dude model like bursting out of the water, and then you see wolves. It's like so silly. There's an aspect of book talk that's the spicy books, and there's a constant trend going on with the tagline reasons you shouldn't be driving through the national park with your windows down while listening to your audiobook, and then it's just a drive through the park while listening to the smuttiest part of the narration of these books that are like, oh, okay. And it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's Carl's Jr. marketing. It's proof that sex sells, but it's bringing attention in an incredibly real way to the national parks. But specifically Joshua Tree National Park. Oh man, are they unhinged. And if anyone's listening to this right now, go check out Joshua Tree National Park on TikTok and just have the time of your life.
That's there's what's interesting about that to me is at least here the reason that they've got those time windows you've got to show up is because they've got way more people that want to go to the parks
Yep.
than they can support. So it seems odd that you'd be trying to uh, well, not that you would be trying, but it seems odd to spend that much effort and money in marketing when you don't need it. It's like
That's the brilliant thing. They're not spending any money whatsoever on this. It's all social media. So it's the social media marketing managers. They're not putting any advertisement dollars on it. They're stitching content from other content creators, and it's just a matter of let's do something that hasn't been done before, but at the same time has been done before. And they're all collaborating with one another to make it let's all the parks do this. Let's make it so that way there's more attention on the parks. And then a lot of those videos at the end of the video shows resources where people could donate, and those donations are to nonprofit organizations that actually support the parks. And that's what's really really cool about this whole thing is trying to find a way to be able to support undersupported parks because the federal government is moving away from supporting our national parks. And it's kind of this double-edged sword, exactly like you're talking about, because well they can't handle the amount of people that are there. There's not enough rangers, and if the federal government is not going to pay for the workers, how are you going to get more rangers? And I was having this conversation with one of my clients yesterday about the idea of how can they capitalize off of this, because these are videos that are getting millions and millions of views. It is a huge viral outcry of people watching these thirst trap national park videos. And I don't know if they're getting any ad revenue off of the amount of streams that they're getting. I don't know if they're getting any monetary benefit on the back end or if it's just getting attention. But the nice thing is it doesn't look like any money is being spent on this advertisement campaign. It's just natural social media.
yeah. I just went to uh, I just went to this Joshua Tree National Park thing because I
Oh,
there's a because when you were talking, I was like, is this really the national park that's doing this? Because I mean, because uh, if they're sending links to other organizations, that seems very ungovernment like.
so
Um,
that's the thing is it's not necessarily the how can I say this? It's not the agencies themselves from the official social media accounts, but there are so many content creators that are having their content shared, specifically OnlyFan creators. And it's winding up being very mutually beneficial because these OnlyFan creators now are getting significantly more subscribers. And these OnlyFan creators are stoked about the additional revenue stream that they've been getting from the national parks stitching the content that they've been making themselves. And then these OnlyFan creators are saying, hey, we love this. Here are some areas that you guys can go and actually support. So it's mutually beneficial, but it's not them directly saying, hey, daddy's not giving us money. Can you go ask mom for us?
Yeah, there's because I mean what I was thinking is, it's like uh it's if they're having a hard time keeping parks open, and they're trying to reduce their headcount by 15%, the social media managers would be one of the first positions that I'd be like, that's a position we don't need to fill. There's
Oh, I disagree. I disagree so much. I think that having somebody that actually curates all of this stuff and stays on top of it, that's actually one of the reasons that people will continue knowing about these things. Because that's the generation that's coming up. Like, I get it from you and I's perspective. Like, they're national parks. There's ways that people know about these. This stuff is out there. But for younger generation, you got to think of how inundated with information they have and how many of those people are more interested in doom scrolling in video games. And if during their doom scroll, they get something that shows them, hey, it's cool to go outside, I'm 100% for that. I want to get more people to national parks. I want to preserve as much of our national parks as we possibly can. I think that that's one of the greatest things that uh, Teddy Roosevelt did is create the national parks. And especially like us growing up, we moved around so much, and we were in the back of a car, and you used every move as an opportunity for us to see America and see national parks. And I think that that was such a important foundational aspect of my growing up, that I really do love the outdoors, and I love the fact that we have these spaces. And I don't want to see them go away, especially some of the really unique places in America, like Yellowstone or the Redwoods, or like Dinosaur National Park is such a rad concept, and it's still one of the places that I want to go to because we've all wanted to be paleontologists growing up after we watched Jurassic Park. That's the national park that you can go to and walk into a dig site. So I think that these national parks create a sense for young people, especially a concept of this is what you could do with your life. There are other possibilities out there. And I don't want to see this stuff go away to be privatized.
Yeah, there's uh and the whole privatization piece of it is, to a certain extent, it's a bit of a red herring. I think we've talked before, but I mean the I used the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska as an example. So there's been, I mean, literally since we were living in Alaska, there's been a movement um, to prevent the drilling for oil in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And and the way that it's presented is, it's like, oh man, if we open this up, then all this land that has been protected is going to be at risk. But if you've ever been to that refuge, it is huge. I mean, like, the park is bigger than Maryland. It's
Yep.
like, it's massive, and it's in the northeast corner of Alaska, so it borders with Canada on the eastern border, and the northern border is the Arctic Ocean. there's a so if you go to that northern part, um, so there's only one road that goes up there, typical Alaska stuff. So you drive it up north, and you hit a junction, and if you go to the left at that junction, west, then you go into what's called the Alaska Petroleum Reserve or something like that.
Hmm.
And there are uh, oil platforms, and probably most important is there are places where offshore oil rigs are supported.
And that's
Um,
like up near Burrow, isn't it?
uh, it's above that. I mean, it's all the way to the north, and a little
Okay.
bit east of that. But uh, but then if you go to the right, it's just a all it is a beach. It's a beach, um, and that beach goes for a very 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 long time. Well, there's so if you look at that huge national wildlife refuge, even if there is oil in like almost all of the park, you can't get to it. It's completely unexploitable. There's because there's no roads, uh, there's no access. You would have to spend so much money to try and build a road to get into those areas. It's very much like Denali, but but even more so. I mean, there's like literally there aren't even Forest Service roads out there. It's just Arctic, and it's not tundra. It's mostly mountains, mostly alpine type terrain, and only the only place where there's oil is like just at the entrance to the park. There's no oil the farther in the park you go. There's just plain no oil. So if they were to open up the entire Anwar to the exploration of oil, I mean, you're talking about a 15 square mile area that would actually be used for um, for drilling for oil. So it's like there's the notion that the entire park would go away, that we would just be giving up the entire national park system to the petroleum companies is just plain not true. And it's a scare tactic that's used to keep people not wanting to drill in that one particular place. And there's a lot of oil. I mean, there's a lot of oil that is that's exploitable from right there, and it's one of there's it's one of the things that we need if we're gonna manufacture things in the U.S. We need energy. And, people are like, oh, okay, well, we need to go to solar energy and we need to go to wind energy. And we've done that. I mean, we've spent a lot of money on solar
But
and
it doesn't
wind.
have the capacity for what we need.
That's exactly right. And
Yeah, like it's good, but it's not sustainable in a world that is going to require more and more and more energy consumption, especially the closer we get to AGI, ASI, the more people that are on the fence with AI start getting on board. And once we start going from 400 million daily users to a billion daily users, and you start realizing how energy intensive AI prompts actually are, it's just not it. It is a good thing, but it is not enough.
yeah, and there's this hidden cost to all this green energy. So it's like the turbine blades for windmills have a fairly short life cycle. I mean, it's like 10, 15 years, and then you've got to replace those blades. Um, but when you replace them, uh, they don't biodegrade. There's
No, they're
so
just
you
landfill space.
that's it. So you've got to have a place where you can bury these things, because they're never going to go away. Well, they're not going to go away for a very, very, very long time. And
I
and
swear,
and
if
there's
you
a
try and tell me that one of the hidden costs is the birds, I don't care.
yeah, there's well, I mean, but there's it is. I mean that is a hidden cost. I mean, you've got
It
there's
is.
a
I think more of a like if I want to be really concerned about the birds, the one-offs that are getting hit by rotating blades, I'm slightly less concerned about than the birds that fly over these giant solar arrays in the middle of the day that are like yardage and acreages of things that are reflecting the sun, and then birds fly over that reflection and they're like instantly killed because of the heat rays that are going straight back up. That's I was reading about this with I think it was Solar City, one of the things that Musk was doing to like build an entire, I think it was like a 1 mile solar grid. And it's like the amount of dead birds that were there was just kind of comical because nobody thought of that when they built it.
yeah, and there's but I mean, just to counter that a little bit, there's when I used to go to the Joint Readiness Training Center, which is a national a training center for the Army, a national training center in at Fort Polk, Louisiana. I think it is. No, it's in where is it? I think it's in Arkansas. Anyway, there's so I would go to JRTC, and when you go to JRTC, they had all these trees that were painted with like red circles around the trunks, and the red circles marked areas that you couldn't go because there were woodpeckers. So there, it's the red-headed woodpecker was a protected species, and when they made this national training center, they did an economic impact survey, and they were like, "Oh well, having soldiers running by and firing weapons is going to scare away these birds." So there was just, I mean, just this huge cost to find all these nests and to mark trees around these nests and to make it so that soldiers were aware that where these woodpeckers were, so they wouldn't go anywhere near a woodpecker during the training rotations. So that's a lot of energy and a lot of time and money that's spent trying to protect, uh, a woodpecker. But then to just kind of poo-poo, oh well, we don't care about the birds if it's a wind generator that's killing the birds, as opposed to, this uh, because a lot of environmentalist folks don't like the fact that the army uses land to train and we blow
Right.
things up and we leave munitions and depleted uranium rounds on the ground and all these things which are bad. I mean, they're not there's a but how bad are they? And when you go to the solar energy thing, because uh in order to in order to not drill for oil, you're going to mine for all the materials that are required to build a solar panel. And then the only way that you can use that solar energy effectively is having battery storage. So now you're going to mine for more materials to create batteries, and um, and there's all the cost associated, and it's not just the cost associated with that. It's we won't allow ourselves to mine for the things that we need to mine in order to not drill for oil.
Yeah.
So there's a so it's just so that um there are really good uses for federal lands, and a lot of times, particularly since uh, since Carter was in office, a lot of land offsets are really kind of like political moves. Um, so I'll use Three Bears in Utah as an example. You know, that was a political move to acquiesce um, uh, native tribes in Utah by creating a new national park in an area that they wanted to have offset. So there's I mean, if you look at our national park structure, we have preserved a lot of land. I mean, a lot of land, and and you know, we just keep doing more and keep doing more, and to a certain extent, we need to figure out ways that um, we can protect land and you know keep wildlife habitat available, but not cripple our economy and our competitiveness on the world stage at the same time. Um,
And I don't
and we
disagree with that. And I think that the idea of privatizing national parks, I agree. It is kind of a red herring. The thing that concerns me more isn't necessarily like, oh, they're gonna strip all the trees from Glacier, or they're gonna cut down the sequoias. Like that, I don't think that that's gonna happen. But what I do think is the reality is private will run things more efficiently, and they will do that for money, and they will change their operations and the experience to pursue capitalist goals. So one of the stupidest things that I think I have ever seen was a review on Google for a national park that said you need to add moving sidewalks. And I was like, no, like that's not what's available. And I understand there are certain aspects that people do want to be able to have available, and like ADA accessibility. That's a real thing that we need to take into consideration. How do we make things more accessible for more people? But at the same time, I don't think there should be a wheelchair ramp installed to get to the top of El Capitan. Personally, I think that it's supposed to be a hard thing because you appreciate what it is by going through the hard thing. I think that maybe we can do more boardwalks and we can put more things out there, but uh, how far do you go with accessibility to make it more accessible to more people before you're put into a position where you're fundamentally changing what the experience of that space is? And that's more of what my concern is. I think that in an effort to try and get as many people and make it as profitable as it will be, they'll turn these things into Disneyland, which is what we experienced with Yellowstone during 2020. When everything shut down and there's nothing that you can do in town, people started going to national parks, which phenomenal. I'm stoked. But when we used to go to Yellowstone in the summers as kids, it was like us and maybe two other families. I've never needed to wait 30, 45 minutes just to find a parking spot at Old Faithful. And if you privatize it, you're going to make it more expensive. If you make it more expensive, you make it less accessible to the public and you make it a playground for the rich. And will I be able to benefit from that? Maybe, probably. But I don't think that that's who it's for. It's for everyone. It should be for everyone, as it is. And that's I think the heart of national parks is that it should be for everyone. And if it's privatized, it's too risky of a decision to lose that.
there's I think a good there's I don't think there's really anybody who's talking about you know the privatization of entire parks. There's so but like allowing corporations to do land leases. That's what we do. We allow them to lease land so that they can access minerals that are on that land. So but they don't own it, and and those areas that they get access to are are very, very small in terms of a percentage of it. So I think Denali National Park in Alaska is a really good picture of this. Because so like even if they were to privatize the public facing portions of Denali, so like the facing portions of Denali is like at the very first 5 miles at the very entrance to that park, where you
Yeah.
go in and there's a hotel and there's restaurants and there's auditoriums where you can go and get presentations about things that are available in the park and so on and so forth. Um, and that's all. I mean, it's like literally all right there at the entrance to the park. So if that was handled by private corporations, that would not affect, the 99.9% of the park that's beyond that is only accessible by one dirt road, and you've got to get on a bus and you got to ride in that bus for, you know, 6 hours to get to the base of Denali and take pictures or whatever. So what the preservation of the Denali National Park would not be in any way um, threatened by privatizing the hotel that's at the front and
I don't
privatize.
disagree with that. The point that I would make though is in privatizing that small portion, the cost of operations for a private entity is inherently going to be more expensive.
Mhm.
And much like the tariffs, those are going to be passed on to the people who are going to that park. And that's the concern that I have is by passing those costs on to the people that want to enjoy those public spaces, it makes it less accessible to people in lower socioeconomic positions. And that's the thing that worries me is I do think these spaces should be for everyone. And adding additional barriers is not something that I'm actively supportive of.
Yeah, and there are there are a lot of examples of private companies being able to do things for a lot less than the government does them for. Um, SpaceX is a really good example of that, but they're not the only example of it. Um, Another good example is the National Engineering Laboratory that's in between. It's in the desert in between Pocatello and Idaho Falls. Um, there's, when the federal government was the only entity in the U.S. that was doing nuclear power was unbelievably expensive. I mean, just like really, really prohibitively expensive. But when we started allowing private companies to build, electrical companies to build nuclear power, then all of a sudden, now nuclear power is competitive, and not only competitive, but highly competitive in terms of providing energy. And when I was living in Florida with your Uncle Richard, they had a huge nuclear power plant right down the street from them, and it provides cheap power. So there are lots of examples. I'm not exact. I don't think that I would agree that it would be more expensive um, if it was run by the by private companies. And to a certain extent, I think it would be less expensive for potentially less expensive for taxpayers because those are they just they just end up being it costs so much money to um, uh, to have to have rangers emptying the trash cans instead of just an employee emptying
Well,
trash
yeah, because you
cans.
have federal benefits that come along with a federal job that you have to pay, and I think a lot of people don't take into consideration the total compensation package. It's not just your hourly rate; it's everything that goes into what the company is paying for you. And for federal workers, there are a lot of additional benefits that go into that total compensation package. Um, I think I guess it's I do agree with you. It would be less on taxpayers, and I think that that's where some of the views of this come from. Is it would be probably better for the collective because the collective would have less taxes going towards it, and then those who wish to utilize it would see the impact of their wish of utilizing it. And it could potentially be cheaper. I would argue that they would probably try to make it a better experience than what it currently is. Because if you're going to take over an operation like that, you're going to want to improve upon it. And having gone through Denali, this is not the greatest experience because it is kind of a pain in the ass. How do you make it not a pain in the ass? How do we pursue those things? How do we make this an experience that people want to come and do? And that's where you come into the differences between the federal government's way of running something versus a private organization. Because if someone like me ran that, hell yeah, I'm going to make it better. I will do everything I can so that way people can enjoy that as much as I enjoy it. And I want to make it as great of an experience and sustainable as possible. That's money. Um, and that's I think where it becomes more of a Disneyland experience, and that's kind of what I experienced with you Yellowstone was. Hey, this is a Disneyland experience. We can go out and do things. And kind of coming back to the whole TikTok thing is when you have social media managers that are getting paid to do these accounts, they're getting people excited, but they're not having to spend a lot of money on it. If you have the private companies doing it, they're going to not only try and make it look more exciting, they're going to try and make it more exciting. I think a really good example is Bogus Basin here in the Treasure Valley. So with the way that, climate has been inconsistent over the last decade, they have been seeing less snowpack and their winter sports have become significantly more and more challenging for them to profit off of. So they have been clearing a backside and they've been doing summer recreational activities. So now you can go up to Bogus Basin year round, which is cool. There's like mountain bike trails there. There's an like a mountain coaster thing that they do. There's a ropes course thing. There's all sorts of fun things that you can do over skiing. But all of my clients that go ski are paying $100 more per person in their family than they did 2 years ago to pay for all the shit that they don't care about. And for a family of, husband, wife, and 3 kids, that's an extra $500 for their wintertime activity. So that's where I can see, like, yeah, you could make it a more holistic experience for the people that want to come and utilize it. And you could probably do some things that'll make it way better. But at the end of the day, those costs will increase because you're going to try and make it a better experience.
There's, I think one of the challenges with it's kind of a balance maybe. There's, the more people you give access to more of that land. So the more land you open to more people, the less land you're actually protecting. And the whole concept behind the national park system was was not to create uh, you know parks or Disneyland type parks for people to come enjoy. It was to like, oh wow, we've got to protect some of the land that's in this country so that uh like we still have that land because Roosevelt protected it. There's and
When I guess
and
the argument that I think you're kind of talking is like as a consumer driven nation, we've let another nation destroy themselves. We'll go buy stuff there, and we still have our bankroll. As soon as they run out, we still have ours.
yeah, there's but again, I think a good comparison is Yellowstone and Denali because Yellowstone as a national park is what you described it. It's Disneyland, and like the entire park is open to all kinds of people, and people are always getting stomped by buffalo, and and I mean,
Shouldn't
I've
be
gone
stupid
through
enough to try and pet it.
Yellowstone. Yeah, where and you're sitting there, you're literally in a traffic jam because people are trying to get out of their cars and take pictures of the buffalo or the elk or whatever. But
That
it
was the
is
worst.
very much a Disneyland kind of experience in that there are so many people there, and and there's so so the notion that the Yellowstone has been preserved as a wildlife space is a false notion. It just is not. Um, and but if you go to Denali, um, you you get a lot of the same things. If you go there and you want to stay in a hotel that's right on the park, there's a hotel that's right on the park. Um, if you you know want to sit in an auditorium, and I always kind of get a kick out of this. You go to a national park and then you sit in an auditorium to watch a video about all the great land that's in the park instead of like actually going out and walking amongst the
Yep.
land. It's I think it's kind of funny, but that's but you've got that, but the oh, oh my goodness. I forgot to put my
Did you just not silence your phone?
I totally
This is the comedy heckling moment right now.
I know. And I usually I was a little kerfluffled when I got on, and I normally because all I have to do is say hey Siri, turn on do not disturb, and uh and then do not disturb. So now yeah, so now do not disturb is on. That's all I had to do was
It's it's a good thing that AI is so readily available and we use it in our daily life that we don't even remember when we're not using it.
yeah, there's I forgot to turn on my do not disturb.
Uh, well, before we get into some of the heavy stuff that we were gonna go in, let's segue into some table topics because we'll probably get a little bit more heated in this next section.
Yeah.
Uh, So, for all of you who this is your first episode with us, thank you. We do a thing every week where we have table topics, which is a card game, and it's just a great conversation starter. And we've been going through the family dinner topics, and they have a bunch of different topics to just start conversations, and I think it's a good thing. So, this card is: do you have any habits you'd like to give up?
Oh yeah. There's um and it's so funny because I gave this up at the beginning of the year, and then I I I broke my streak on Easter, and now I'm right back where I was before. But I have the world's worst sweet tooth. Um and it's uh it's horrible. It's like I know that it's sugar uh is probably the most addicting substance that we
100%.
yeah, there's
I got this from you, 100%.
yeah, and there's and it's so insidious in that you know there's it's like ice cream is like one of the world's most comfortable comfort foods. Because eating an ice cream cone on a hot day, it's just it's not just delicious, but it's romantic. Um, and and but once you eat some sugar, your brain just goes, I need sugar.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And it's like I remember when I quit smoking cigarettes, uh, you know, that was a pretty hard bear and or you know, pretty tough bear to wrestle. And but it ended, you know, just a couple months, and then you get used to it, and I didn't have any cravings any longer. But like the whole time, so I quit eating sweets on New Year's Day, and I didn't have, I mean, I didn't even have, I had nothing. I had no candy, no ice cream, no no anything, not anything with sugar, because like if you eat a slice of bread you got some sugar, but no
Yeah.
added sugar, no sweets, no pie, no anything like that, until Easter Sunday. And then on Easter Sunday I was walking around on the Pearl Street Mall, and I went and I got an ice cream cone, and and uh and I was like, oh, I'm just
You
gonna
were
get an
like,
ice cream.
Jesus died for my sins, and I think I should indulge.
Yeah, yeah. But but now I'm like it's like every day I want to go, and I haven't, succumbed to it as every time. But yeah, I'm right back into wrestling the sugar bear, and that's the thing that I would like to, and not just because it's, they're so calorie heavy and it's hard to maintain an energy balance and so on. Because if you eat a lot of sugar, man, there's just no way you're gonna work that off, because
No.
yeah, there's because it's so dense in terms of and here's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know. There's uh there's the 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 industry that really made slavery in the Americas, not just the United States, but in the Americas,
It was
a
sugar cane. It
profitable.
wasn't cotton.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
There's a so it was the European sweet tooth that 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 needed the slave labor that was being provided in the Americas. Uh, and yeah, it was just an insidious. And yeah, it's just there's really nothing good about it. Um,
So
well,
one of
except
the
for it tastes delicious.
yeah, in the immediate, it's amazing. One of the things when I started working out a little bit more was I realized, like, okay, this is the thing that needs to go if I want to be serious about this, because it just sticks to my gut. And if I have a little bit of sugar, I continue, and then I have a lot of sugar.
Yeah,
So one of the things that we wound up doing are like those big OXO containers that have like the pop lids and you can see through them. I have this like shelving unit that we put in the kitchen, and that's where all of our snacks are. The snacks are incredibly visible, they're ready and available, and you can see them and you can grab them, and I make all of my snacks very easy to access. But all of my snacks are, I have an OXO container of Brazil nuts and almonds and cashews and macadamia nuts and pistachios, and I buy dried strawberries and dried blueberries, and I'm trying to put nuts and berries and small snackable, like, okay, I need to munch through the day. But if I see it, it's the path of least resistance, and that's the one that I'll go to. And then my cabinets that have actual doors on them, I hide my candy in my cabinets. And because I'm so used to going to the things that are normal, it makes it so that way I can occasionally go and be like, okay, there's a chocolate treat. I can have a chocolate treat. And I can see that there's only a small amount in here. So I'm going into the reserve. I don't want to go into the reserve all the time. I have plenty of snacks out here, but it actually mentally separates everything for me, because I only have a finite amount of sugar. But last week we didn't have any ice cream, and I went to Costco, and they have these Dubai chocolate bar ice cream bars, and I ate like three of them in one day. It was not a good day, and I was like, I'm in the mood for ice cream. And then when I had one ice cream bar, I was like, I think I'm in the mood for another ice cream bar. And then later that night, have dinner. I'm like, well, it's dessert time. That's That's not midday snacking. That's completely separate. This is the dessert that I get at the end of the day. And it's just so easy to justify it in your mind of just like sweet tooth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's and like if you go shopping and you're like you're on a you're in a sugar craving when you go shopping, you're like, oh man, I'm gonna get and Costco will kill you, man, because you're like, oh man, look how inexpensive this 500
Yeah.
pound box of licorice is.
Oh man, for all the Easter sales that they had, I have not bought a bag of these in literal years because of you. And, and they had like $10 off their bag of Jelly Bellies. The Costco size bag of Jelly Bellies. And that thing lasted maybe 3 days. Uh, I was just
Yeah,
like, you are mine. I even like the buttered popcorn ones.
and I mean I have not had any of these all year, but like uh um the gummy bears. Good night. I can eat gummy bears like I can eat a lot of gummy bears. I can eat a lot of gummy and like you're talking about like having sweets hidden in your counters. If there are sweets in my apartment, I will eat them. There's just there's I can't get like uh you know a packet of 16 Kit Kat bars because I will eat all 16
Yeah.
Kit Kat bars. There's just
One of
no.
the things that I've tried to start doing is I am looking up all of the processes and watching videos of how artificial dyes are actually made. And I'm just trying to disgust myself as much as I possibly can mentally. Be like, I can't put that in my body at all. That's gross. Like there's a natural red food dye that is it's a natural dye, but it's crushed up beetles. And it's this beetle that has this really, really vibrant red tint to it. So they dry and they crush up this beetle and then they put it in nerds. And that information is what made it so that way I stopped eating nerd gummy clusters because I would eat bags upon bags of gummy clusters. Like, these are so good. Now I realize, like, oh, I'm just eating a whole bunch of bugs.
Yeah, and there's a there the bugs are better for you than oil based
Like the
dyes.
petroleum based dyes.
Yeah, there's and there's all these like uh chemists, these really highly educated scientists who sit in labs and try and make the perfect blue for the blueberry crunch or whatever. Um, and Yeah, it'll be interesting there because RFK appears to be making some inroads on
On
uh
artificial dyes.
yeah, and it's there's I've been a little frustrated with RFK, but I've been frustrated with a lot of things. The and the way that this administration is like implementing their promises, but yeah, there's it seems like he's doing some good with regard to dyes because I mean it's like there's so many countries. There's the bodega that's right down the street from me. There's they sell all kinds of Japanese snack products. So they're like the same snack products that we have, like Pringles or whatever, but they're Japanese Pringles, and they've got different flavors
You got like the
and
wasabi ones and like the squid ones.
yeah, they're all and it's so funny because the Gen Alpha folks are, I mean, they just love it. They're just constantly in there, and it's right down the street from Boulder High School, and not too far from Casey Middle School. So there's always kids in there, and those snacks just go. And I used to go in there because they also have gummy bears, and that's where I would get my. I literally have not been in that store all year, because if I go in there, I know I'm going to buy a pack of gummy bears. There's just no way I'm gonna.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit. We didn't do for our 15th episode the 100 days of the administration because it was our 100 days. But we're kind of at a point now where I think it's fair to say you feel stupid yet about your vote.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen that. That's kind of like a in our letters to the editor here in Boulder and the Daily Camera, our local paper.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of people who are writing letters to the editor, and they're like, man, all these people, they have to be, um, regretting their vote or whatever. How could you? But for me, I don't regret it at all. There's and in fact, we didn't plan this, but okay, yeah, I just happened to have it here because I've been thinking about this. So this is my list of people that I voted for, right? So what the year of the election, the name of the candidate, the party that I voted for, what party that candidate was, whether or not they won, and then a column for whether or not I regret it. So, so I I regret my second. Uh, I regret my vote for Bill Clinton. I thought that voting for Bill Clinton was a mistake. I thought he was bad for the country. Um, I regret my second vote for Barack Obama. Um,
Over Mitt
uh,
Romney.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And and so like I don't regret my first vote for President Obama because there's a I thought he was the best choice, and I think he turned out to be a pretty bad president, but uh, but the the choice during his first election was he was the best candidate. But anyway, there's so but I don't regret my vote for because I voted for President Trump this election cycle, but it's the alternative. That's the thing. Is for me, it's always every election is an A B choice between one person and the other person, and uh, I have voted for candidates from both parties, um, and because sometimes you just there's that's just the choice that you have. You're going to vote for the person that you think is the best. And I think that if Kamala Harris had gotten in, I think our country would be in much worse circumstances than we are with President Trump, and in a lot of different ways. I mean, the the war in Ukraine uh,
There
would
wouldn't be
be
any progress in that, and I can agree with that.
it's not just that there wouldn't be any progress. If you look at what the Europeans are doing, they are marching towards a European war against Russia, um, and they're trying to make it as difficult for Russia to not start a war with Europe as they possibly can, and the uh, we have always been the enablers of that. So we're like, oh, hey, we will give you access to our entire nuclear arsenal. And we will use our nuclear arsenal in defense. And I'm like, there's people are always talking about, oh, well, if somebody attacks a NATO nation, then Article 5 is automatically um, uh, enacted. and you were somehow obligated. That's not the way that Article 5 is written. So uh, so every nation in NATO is sovereign. No nation in NATO has to go to war because of Article 5 or any other article of the treaty if they don't want to go to war. But but uh, but we would continue that march, and we would be much closer to a direct war between not Ukraine and Russia, but between Russia and the United States. If you look at that entire war, that that's what that war is. That war is a war between Russia and NATO. Um, and but the problem is NATO hasn't been fighting the war. The United States has been fighting the war. The United States has been funding it, and there's if you just look at the fact that all of the arms that European countries have provided to Ukraine have been provided in the form of loans, um, which is similar to what we're doing with Israel. So people are like, oh well, we're giving Israel these munitions to attack um, uh, Palestinians in Gaza. There's there's so many things that are false about that statement, but we're not giving them anything. We're selling them munitions. Um, but in Ukraine, we're just like giving them money, and we're giving them weapons. We're giving them weapons that are so technologically advanced they don't know how to use them. They don't have anybody who's able to. We don't want to train them because we don't trust them. So we don't want to train them in how to use our weapons because we don't trust them. And so we're giving them all the targeting information. So like the HIMARS, they're pressing the send button on the HIMARS, but we're doing the targeting, we're doing the tracking, we're doing all of the high tech stuff, and Russia knows that. So Russia knows that it's Americans sitting at terminals targeting um, facilities inside of Russia so that they can be attacked. Um, uh, and that is just there's yeah, it's just really ridiculous. And we would be had Kamala Harris gotten in office, we would be like way, way farther down that road, I believe.
I can agree with you on the extent that if we were in the same trajectory that we find ourselves presently, if Kamala was the president today, we would be in a way, 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 way worse situation. But because of the whole flood the zone aspect, I think that just the situation would be, not even apples and oranges, it'd be apples and potatoes. Like it would be such a different type of cluster that you'd just be looking at it as like, okay, how are you screwing up versus how is this person screwing up? Like I don't think we would have a lot of the trade war issues that we're having. Don't think that we would have a lot of the uh, fear from American citizens about the goings on in the government. And I know that when we were talking earlier, there was like a couple of things that either side can wind up having issues. But I think the bigger issues in this administration that I really worry about are like the ethical aspects of everything. It's seeing that there's these handshake agreements that yeah everybody's known those things have happened, but now they're just happening blatantly. The fact that there's a very, very, very blatant conflict of interest with his Trump coin and Melania coin launching and them getting millions and millions of dollars from who? And the news this morning of the gifted luxury jet. The to me the presidency is not a position that comes with fringe benefits. It's a position of authority, it's a position of power. And are you going to get book deals when you leave that office? Yeah, absolutely. Everybody wants to know what it was to be the president. But while you're in office, I think that you should be above reproach on a certain thing, and a certain amount of things. And I know that we see differently on the absolute power of the executive branch, and I can understand your perspective of they should be able to shape the way that the government runs to their perspective of how the government should be run, and there shouldn't be other branches of the government that get involved with that. But there is still this overlying, okay, are you doing these things and because you're personally gaining, you're helping another country? Or is this really going to be a quid pro quo, or like, hey, if you scratch my back, I'm going to scratch your back, and then everybody benefits, but really I benefit? Because that's what it seems more of.
There's well, there's I'm not certain that I would agree that it's more. I mean, if you look at the Clintons and uh, the Clinton Global Initiative, that is really nothing but a but a wealth uh, generation arm of the Clinton family, um, and so the Clintons obviously have benefited hugely in terms of using the power that they had because of um, Bill Clinton's presidency and Hillary Clinton's uh, time as Secretary of State. There's and like now even uh, their daughter Chelsea is I think she's might be an executive vice president, but she's a very senior person in the Clinton Global Initiative, so in the Clinton Foundation. So she's got a huge job and she never had to like earn anything else. So like Jared Kushner, I think is a really good example, and Eric Trump is a really good example of this, in that uh, Eric Trump is a powerhouse in uh, the luxury real estate market, regardless of whether or not his dad was president of the United States. Now, it is because his dad was a billionaire who made his fortune in the real estate business, but it's uh, but Eric Trump and Ivanka Trump have both made names for themselves, and they're very, very capable executives in their own right. So bringing them in to work on the government really made sense because the thing that Trump didn't have in his first term was people that he could trust. Um, and to a certain extent, his cabinet secretaries this time are facing this exact same issue. But so he brought both Jared and his daughter in because he trusted them, and they had years of executive experience proving that they could make deals. And I think that the Abraham Accords are a great example of that with Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner, uh, is he making a fortune uh, in Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Mid East? He's making a huge amount of money, and he's making it because of the relationships that he built during that time frame. But the Abraham Accords was like the first, or were the first major peace initiatives that the United States has signed um, in that region since Bill Clinton. Jimmy Carter. They're
The Clinton had signed an agreement with was it Yasser Arafat, wasn't it?
yeah, and that, I mean, that's, there's again, there's I mean, I'm I am not happy with the lack of progress that the Trump administration has made on peace promises that they made. Now, I don't think, I understood that he was using a lot of hyperbole. So the notion that the war in Gaza was going to be over before he took office, that just wasn't going to happen. There was no way that
No.
was going to happen. Same thing with the war in Ukraine. Um, but but so I'm not happy with that at all. But part of the challenge is, at least in the Ukraine theater, is the Europeans are absolutely determined to go to war with Russia. And when it started looking like the United States was going to pull out in Ukraine, they're like, oh, okay, well, we're going to get together and now we're going to fund um, this war in Ukraine. So Zelensky now feels emboldened, um, in standing up to the United States, because he knows he's going to get cash from the European Union and from everybody else in NATO. Um, so 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 once again, NATO and the European Union is undercutting the peace efforts that the U.S. is trying to make in Europe, because why we don't recognize this, but like, Europe is they are a nation of war. They're a continent of warmongers. They've been fighting each other for for
Millennia.
yeah, for thousands of years, and they've gone too long without a war on their own soil. So they want to fight it. They just plain want to fight it. And I'm like, okay, fine, let them fight. I am very much with JD Vance on this. There's I would if I had my druthers, we would just tell Ukraine, um, that we're not giving you anything else. We're not there's because there's no way, and this is one of the reasons why Russia isn't taking us seriously in terms of being a an unbiased peace negotiator. Because how can we be an unbiased broker of peace when we're providing weapons to a particular side? And not only are we providing weapons to that particular side, but we're actively using our intelligence information to target, uh, not just you know items in the Ukrainian theater of war, but strategic targets in Russian sovereign territory, to include, targets that are integral to their nuclear defense capacity. Which, I mean, if you start taking out a country's strategic, early warning capabilities, they're there's they have to respond to that. You can't allow people to make it so that you're blind to a potential, existential nuclear attack.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Kool-Aid Man theory. Like, you break through my fence, you're not getting to my front door. And I
Yeah.
get that.
So so uh so um uh so so we're not an honest broker when it comes uh to trying to negotiate peace uh in that war. And the only way we could become an honest broker is by pulling out, saying we're going to be totally neutral in this, with the exception of we would love to be the place that negotiates peace. Because who is that now? I mean, who other than Saudi Arabia? there's who is the nation that could, um, in an unbiased way, broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. It's not the
Cur-
United States, and it's not France. It's not Turkey. It's not. There's
Do you
probably, to be
think it
honest,
could be the UAE?
yeah. So it would be somebody in the Middle East. So Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia. There's the UAE. Qatar could do it. I mean, there's a lot of countries that are in the Mid East that could be that could be a table that everybody gets around. Um,
So,
um,
I mean, Cutter's a good example of how could they be considered unbiased if they're providing luxury gifts that show bias towards a leader of one nation?
there's yeah that that's actually a really so the way that it's being presented in the media is that this is a gift uh, uh, to Donald J. Trump, um, and that's not what it is. Now it's a clever idea, is what it is. It's a very clever idea. Um, so the gift is a gift to the United States government, and the reason for the gift is and the reason why Trump is so upset about it is when he took office the first time, Boeing was under contract to provide new Air Force One platforms,
Okay.
and the current Air Force One platforms are more than 50 years old. They're way beyond their service life, and we spend an amazing amount of money on maintenance, keeping those jets in the sky. Um, and we've known that for a long time. It was during the Obama administration that the contract was let to replace the current Air Force One platforms, because it's not just one plane, it's two.
And
Um,
isn't Boeing selected specifically because they are the American aeronautic engineer of aircraft and they wanted to make sure that the Air Force One was American made?
there's well, why does Boeing get that contract? Why does Boeing get a lot of contracts? There's
Because it's them or Airbus, and it's like,
yeah,
are we
so,
going to support ourselves or are we going to support European? And I get that.
yeah,
But I could also imagine, after the last 2 years Boeing has had, don't want that for Air Force One.
yeah, but they've had this contract for longer than that, but they haven't been able to deliver on the contract. So when President Trump took office the first time, that was one of the first things he said. He was like, why on earth do we have this old plane? Why haven't we replaced this plane? And he looked at that contract, and the only thing that everybody got upset about is he wanted to change the color scheme. Um, so he wanted to change it, instead of the the blue that it's been since JFK. He wanted to make it a red, white, and blue um, jet. So
I
the
can get
paint,
behind that as long as it's not gilded gold.
yeah. There's but but so he did some change orders onto it, and then he negotiated a much lower cost or lower price for the total package of all the planes, and and the contract started going. Well, then as soon as uh, Joe Biden got into office, the first thing he's basically anything that Trump did, he wanted to stop. So he implemented all these change orders uh, to say no, no, no. Now we want all the things that were renegotiated with Trump. We want to renegotiate them back to what they were beforehand. So now, Trump gets in office the second time, and Boeing is literally no closer to delivering on the contract that was let with Barack Obama than they were the first time he took office. So for
Okay.
the whole 4 years he was in an office and the whole 4 years that Biden was in office, they've made no progress on the contract, and it's still the exact same plane, and he's upset about it, and he's made it known that he's upset about it, and so uh, so now Cutter's like, well, hey, we got a plane we'll give you, and it's a Boeing platform jet, and it's a Boeing platform jet that is people are like, oh, it's a flying palace. What do you think
So is
Air
Air Force
Force
One.
One is?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean, Air Force One is not only it's a flying palace, it's a flying fortress of a palace.
Yeah,
There's
it's something that the president operates in. It's the same thing as the White House. The White House is a palace.
so so what Qatar is doing is they are giving the United States use of a $400 million jet for no cost, none. They're just transferring the jet to the United States government for the use of the president, but they're but and but they're being real specific because uh, the uh, the Biden administration was not friendly towards any Middle Eastern nation. Was not did not there was there were, It's not like we made any trade deals or any peace deals while Joe Biden was the president of the United States, and it's not in their economic interest to give a plane to the Democratic Party. That the only reason that they are willing to give this plane to the United States is because they know that it will benefit the current president of the United States. So there's a stipulation in the contract where they're going to transfer it to the United States for this term, and then at the end of this term, the plane automatically gets transferred to Donald Trump's presidential library. Now you might think that that's like, oh man, this is the first time that that's ever happened, but the uh, the Ronald Reagan Library has the uh, the Air Force One that was Air Force One while he was flying around. So the United States government gave to Ronald Reagan the Air Force One that was no longer in service because we got the planes that they're using now.
So does
So
that mean JD Vance is going to get the shitty 60-year-old plane?
yeah, there's so what's going to happen to the current Air Force Ones? We don't really know, but what we do know is this plane that Qatar's going to give, Trump is going to use it to fly around while he's in office, and then when he gets out of office, it's going to be the ownership will go to his presidential library, but he will use it to travel around the world doing the business of his presidential library, um, which is exercising influence, and he's going to use it. He's going to use his past presidencies to to continue to build the the biggest brand that he's got is the luxury real estate market that his son Eric is really running.
So and that, I mean, I think that kind of goes more into that gray area of that seems like it's a gift that while yes, temporarily it will benefit the sitting office of the president of the United States, but there's going to be way more benefit to private real estate organizations than there will be towards the influence of American politics. And then separate from that, because of all the stuff that's been going on with Boeing, their orders are so delayed that Okay, are they going to be able to fulfill the Air Force One that the next POTUS is going to need to be able to utilize before this gets transferred? And if they've failed for two administrations, what's to say that they're not going to fail for a third administration? And what happens with POTUS 48? You know, what happens with that person? Do
There's
they use Marine Force One?
and again, it's this is a your guy's worse than my guy argument, and there's I don't think there's a way to decouple the U.S. presidency from money. I don't think from the power of money, but I mean the answer to, or at least the response, not the answer, the response to notions that the current president is more corrupt than any other president or whatever is Hunter Biden. And the notion that Hunter Biden just somehow started getting six-figure art sales for his bubble
Oh, I'm
blowing.
not defending Hunter Biden whatsoever. Not even a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah, no.
yeah.
Like Biden's,
So
I did not vote for the Bidens at all. I think that was a horrible, horrible, horrible administration. And kind of going back on the list that you were talking about, like, yeah, my first vote was Bush Kerry, and I voted for Cobra Commander that year because John Kerry was dumb. I wasn't old enough to vote in the first Bush administration. I probably would have voted for Gore, which would have been a bad decision. I voted for Obama the first time because I didn't want to see a continuation of the war, and I thought that that would move us away from the war. I didn't like Mitt Romney, but in retrospect, I think Mitt Romney would have prevented Donald Trump. And that's why
yeah,
I think that that would have been the better decision for the second administration. I think the biggest regret that I've had is voting for Hillary because I never supported Hillary. And I supported Bernie through and through and through and through. And I did not like Hillary whatsoever, but I did want to get on board with the party and be like, okay, if you guys think that it's the collective, I'll go with the collective. I'll vote for her, even though she has shitty policies. Um, and then after I realized that that did nothing, that's when I stopped caring about the whole I have two choices. As soon as Biden was my option, I was like, I'm still writing in Bernie. He's an option, and frankly, I know he's going to lose, but I'm at least voting my No. Actually, no, I didn't write in Bernie. I wrote in Joe Jorgensen, the Libertarian candidate. And I thought that she was going to be a terrible president. I legitimately was like, she's a terrible option, but she is the one that I can at least put my heart into because the things that she's going for are the libertarian values. And I think Biden sucks. I think Trump sucks. And then this year, I went back to my initial thought of I'm given two shit options. I'm writing in Cobra Commander again because a fictional character villain is going to do less harm than either of these two real world people. And then I get to say, yeah, I paid my admission for my ability to bitch for the next 4 years. Because if you're not voting, you don't get to have a say. Period. If you're not going to make your statement known when they're actually listening, I don't think you have the right to bitch for the next 4 years. But I'm not really going to say like your guy is worse than my guy and make that comparison because, yeah, my guy would have sucked too. Cobra Commander would have been a terrible president. Kamala would have been a horrible president. The issues that I have is not a comparison issue. It's the I'm looking at what you're doing and what you are doing bothers me. And I'm not trying to do tit for tat like, oh, well, she would have done this or he would have done that. It's like, no, the stuff in front of me is bothering me. The person that is in the position is doing these things. And ultimately that is the issue, is not this comparison of who could have done it better because frankly everyone would do it different and everyone's different would be some kind of level of bad for a certain amount of people. But I do think that the direction that the nation is moving towards as a whole, and this is on both sides, is in a less ethical space. And we've kind of touched on this over the last couple of weeks. that I really think it has more to do with populism than Republicans or Democrats. I think it has
Yeah,
more to do with a lack of education in young people and understanding how politics actually works, understanding how these geopolitical relationships work between nations, a lack of understanding in how cultures of other nations are, and we're only so focused on America, America, America that you lose sight of the rest of the world. And when you are so focused on just yourself, it lets other people get away with things. And that's what my concern is.
yeah, and there's a and so I mean, what I've been responded to was the question of, do I regret my vote?
Fair,
And
fair.
for me, yeah, for me, doing a write-in or a third party vote is the same as a member of Congress voting present on a bill because they don't want to vote for or against it. So they're like, present, I was here, but I'm not going to tell
Yeah.
you what I would, I there, and that, so that's, to me, that's the equivalent of voting present. So I'm
See,
like,
and
okay,
I think you and I are in a little bit different position than that. If you are elected into Congress and you vote present, fuck you, you didn't do your job that the people put you into your position to put you into. Fuck you, you should get kicked out of that position. You, as a traditionalist living in Boulder, Colorado, your voice means shit. My voice as a progressive in Idaho, my voice means shit. I vote local. And the local elections are the things that I can impact. And the presidential stuff, my state is red, your state is blue. Period.
yeah, and there's that is definitely a true statement. There's and it's and in both states it's really because the the other party is has been out of power for so long that they're just almost ludicrous in their um in their not being a viable option. So here the statewide Republican candidates that they have fielded for governor are just like, there is no way any reasonable person could vote for those candidates. And the same thing is true in for the Democrats in Idaho, because
100%.
the Democrats in Idaho are so extreme in their positions. There's no way they're going to win. It's just it, and the same is true for Republicans here. There's no way that any moderate Democrat would vote for any Republican candidate that I've seen on the ballot here in Colorado, and there's no way that any moderate Republican would vote for any of the Democratic candidates in Idaho because the two parties have. And this is one of the things that, but in terms of like populism, and this is where I think that you know both parties need to kind of have a reckoning. Um, there's there's the populist nature of both parties has driven them to completely abandon um, uh, uh, not not I don't want to use the term traditional American values, because as soon as you say that, you're like, well, the values that I like in America are the traditional ones, and the values that you like in America
Yeah, those are
are the
normalized American
yeah,
values,
yeah,
and normally the subjective to your experience term.
yeah. There's but I mean, there's on two different sides. There's so like on my perspective of your side, the you know, all kinds of people are like, "Oh man, well we've got to protect the right for free speech," and they're talking about free speech for the people who are protesting on colleges, and free speech for protests against uh, at ICE facilities where they're trying to process migrants, and uh, but but the but the value of free speech in America means it literally means that Nazis get to speak.
Yeah.
There's and that
People get to say things that you don't like.
that's the only reason to have the First Amendment, is so that there can be speech that is uncomfortable, and and there's the both sides are guilty of this, but I think that the liberal side has gone so far. I mean, the whole notion of censoring speech because it's misinformation or
God. Yeah.
disinformation, and political speech that is hyperbole is now banned.
Well, and
Uh,
one of the things that I find absolutely hilarious is I try and have really, really frank discussions about suicide because I've been in that headspace before. When I do live streams on my social medias, it's something that, oh, okay, well, what's your business? What's the barber store? I'm like, well, okay, I'll tell you. This is the origins of it. It's from when I had the big sad, uh, and I thought of the unaliving thoughts. It's like, come on. I was thinking of killing myself. Like, let's just talk about it. Like, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but let's talk about it. And what's so interesting about people on the left with the free speech stuff is they think that they're being so clever with the way that they're working around the system to be like, oh, well, I'm going to say this thing that means something different because I don't want to offend somebody else and I don't want to hurt their feelings. Well, then you're not talking about what you're talking about. The idea of killing yourself is an offensive thought. It is a really horrifying thought. If you're talking about that, it should make someone uncomfortable. And if you're trying to make niceties about this uncomfortable reality, you are failing to acknowledge the reality of what it is. And a lot of the times with the approach towards, well, you should be able to say whatever you want to, as long as it doesn't offend others. It's like, well, then you've put a caveat on something and you've changed the initial purpose.
yeah, and hate speech and hurtful speech, and like Colorado, I don't think the governor signed it yet, but I'm pretty sure he's going to just pass the law to where if parents uh, dead name their children. So if a child says, "I
Canada
want
came
you,"
to Colorado?
so if a parent doesn't uh, doesn't allow a child to just assume whatever name they want and insists on calling them the name that they gave them and put on their birth certificate, and there's uh, then that parent is committing a felony, and that's this law.
How is
And
that going to go? How's the Supreme Court won't uphold that?
well, that's the thing.
It'll have
It's
to get
like
challenged, and that'll suck.
but it's got to get challenged. It's got to work its way through the courts. It's got to, so the notion this is one of the challenges. So let me flip to the other side. I say that about free speech with the liberal movement, but in the conservative movement, there's there. I look like I'm honking someone. There,
Uh, we're probably gonna have to wrap up pretty soon because the air conditioner guy just started outside, and I don't know if you can hear any of that stuff at all, but it's pretty loud for me. Can you hear any of it?
no, I don't hear anything.
Okay, good. Then let's keep going for the time.
But there's the Republicans have just completely thrown out any kind of due process consideration. Due process is now too hard for the government to do,
It's like the
and
habeas corpus stuff.
yeah, but even there, I mean, the notion that we're talking about suspending habeas corpus, um, which it is kind of funny when I hear uh liberals talk about, oh man, Lincoln would be rolling over in his grave if he knew that they were suspending habeas corpus. I'm like, you do know that Lincoln was the first president to suspend habeas corpus, right? There's, but there, but to a certain extent, that was in the middle of like literally a civil war.
Yeah, that was a very different reason for it, not a what is seemingly a projected emergency.
Now, there's a
I would argue that there is an emergency, maybe not necessarily to the extent that is being conveyed, but I do think that there is a real concern that I'm not trying to downplay. I just think that it's being conveyed at a 14 and it's probably closer to an 8.
yeah, and there's one of the things that the Trump administration is doing that I think is unfortunate um, is they're making every migrant into a transnational gang member. And so they're like people who have never committed any crime, have no connection to any criminal organization, are getting picked up and thrown out of the country, not because of anything they've done, but because we have abandoned all due process. So I agree that that the scale of the immigrant problem that was caused by the Biden administration means that the traditional pathways for due process are just not reasonable. I mean, there's no way that you're going to throw millions of people out of the country if every single one of those people has
Due process. Yeah.
ha, and I won't say due process, but I will say due process that includes appearance before a judge and any kind of an any kind of an appeal right.
So a
So
legal structure.
no, I think there should be a legal structure. That's kind of the whole idea behind due process. But I think that that hiring administrative judges for the Department of Homeland Security that can make summary judgments against migrants with no appeal right is very different than just, you know, keeping people in secret facilities and flying them to another country
Okay.
before anybody gets a chance to know that they've even been arrested.
Because an
Um,
administrative judge without an appeals process would be able to, it would be an overload for that judge, but it would be able to actually give people what they are due, and it could be done so in a significantly more timely manner without overwhelming the traditional judicial branch.
yeah. So and the the burden of proof I think should be much lower. Um, there's so I do think that there are ways that we could give um, migrants who are here in the country unlawfully due process that would do two things. One, it would make sure that we're not sending people into prisons where they're going to be murdered, and we're not taking people who are well, if they're here illegally. It's just one of those things that
We're not mistaking legal residents for illegal residents.
yeah, and there's and the scale of the problem is so huge that that traditional due process is, I believe, overly burdensome on the government. But the principle of due process is a principle, and it's got to be applied, and uh, it doesn't say that citizens have a right to due process. It says that people have a right to due process. So that means that if you are a person inside the United States, even if you are a resident or a citizen of another nation, you're entitled to the due process protections that are provided to all people who are in the U.S. But it's like there's I'll use the Guantanamo Bay and the military tribunals that we used for um, people in the global war on terror. So so we're like, oh man, there's no way that we can use uh, American courts. We can give them traditional trials because we tortured them. We so some of the information that we got was clearly gained through unlawful means. Um, we and so there's no way that we would all the evidence that we have that could prove them guilty of their crime are fruits of a poisoned tree. So these people would get released if we gave them a a trial like we would give to a normal U.S. citizen. So we're like, oh, okay, that's how the whole Guantanamo place became a deal because we're like, well, if as long as we keep them in a foreign land, then uh,
Right.
we don't have
Foreign
to.
soil, foreign problems.
That's exactly right. So we kept them in Guantanamo and we convicted them with military tribunals. And then after they were convicted by a military tribunal, in many cases we transferred them into prisons in the United States, um, based upon those convictions. And now they're they can appeal, but those appeals aren't going anywhere. But so there are lots of terrorists from the global war on terror who are residents of Colorado now at the AdMax in Florence. There's so so uh, but so they got a different due process than most citizens of the United States get. Oh wow,
Hmm.
there's that was thunder. Um,
You're
so
getting a bunch of rain right now, aren't you?
there's well it looks like it's just starting to come in, so I'm going to try and close this. There we go. Now I'm good. Now my window's closed. Um, but so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that that these people are entitled to due process, but I don't think the due process should include immigration judges. I think they should
Okay.
be administrative judges that could be hired or appointed. We could take instead of firing all these people from the Department of Homeland Security, we could appoint them as administrative judges and and allow them to work in that role from the exact same location that they're at, and they could run proceedings by video conference, and we could use those people uh, to get people out of the country in a lawful way instead of just trying to, secretly ship them off. And and my whole point in that whole long conversation was that both parties are abandoning what is the framework of the United States system. And when I say I'm a traditionalist, I believe that the system of government that the United States has kept us out of war since World War II. We literally fought a Cold War and defeated the Soviet Union, our greatest enemy of the last 100 years, and we defeated them without ever firing a shot, without ever any kind of direct military confrontation with the Soviet Union. We completely defeated that nation. They dissolved in the same way. The dissolution of the Soviet Union was as complete as if we had fought a nuclear war against them and won. There is no more Soviet Union. That entire system of government has been gone since 1994 or whatever it was, and uh, and that was completely enabled by by two things. One, you know, a strong United States abroad, and a United States internally that was that shining city on a hill. So that you know, people were like, oh well, you know, the U.S. is really an example that we want to follow. We would like to see more of the world like the U.S. We would like to see democracies like the U.S. And that is not what people think anymore in the world.
Mm-mm.
People don't see us as an example. And worse than that, allies don't see us as a reliable partner because of the way that we got out of Afghanistan. Um, so 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 we are not a shining city on a hill, and you know the and we do need something to use the Trump term to make America great again. But I don't think that making America great again involves despotism. And I also don't think it involves bureaucratic totalitarianism. So you know, the Democratic Party completely just decided that they weren't going to have an election for their presidential candidate. They just like, oh well, we're not, forget this whole, you know, long history of of the competitive process in the electoral determination of who's going to be the president of the United States. None, zero, none. And like people are talking about how the Vatican process for electing a pope is secret compared to the Democratic Party's process of selecting a presidential candidate in the United States. It is like the most open election that you could
Yep.
ever possibly have. And
Yep.
and then when Biden dropped out, they like doubled down on it, and they were like, "Oh, okay, well, we didn't have an election last time, so why should we have an election this time?" So someone, and nobody knows who, still to this day, people speculate that it was Nancy Pelosi. People speculate that it was Barack Obama. People speculate that it was Michelle Obama. That there were all these people behind the scenes who made these decisions, but nobody, even in the Democratic Party, except for the people that made the choices, nobody knows how Kamala Harris was chosen to be the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. That is,
Uh, it's the part that ruined the Democrats for me. And like that legitimately was the time where I said I'm not associating. It's funny because it's kind of it's like when I left church. It's like, yeah, I still have a lot of those values, but man, I don't want to be associated with those people anymore. Like that's my problem. Is a lot of those people are making decisions that I just can't put myself behind, so I just can't associate myself with those people anymore. And as soon as the Democrats just said, "Hey, we're gonna tell you who's the good decision for you to make," I was like, I'm out.
yeah. Uh, there's, and so in the electoral process, and in the government, if you look at the way that the Biden administration um, was conducted, and the way that the Obama administration was conducted, it was bureaucratic rule. So like you know, we talk Obama was killing American citizens abroad using drones with no judicial process whatsoever. So we're upset that we're taking migrants who came here illegally and we're not giving them due process. Obama was literally killing American citizens with zero due process and no kind of review whatsoever. If this person's on a target list, there's it was a bureaucratic decision. There were algorithms that he had put in place within the Department of Defense to just, it's like, okay, now let's take them out. Now let's take them out. So people are getting killed by drones without any human involvement in the decision making process, other than, oh well, it meets the criteria, so let's kill him. It meets the criteria, so let's kill him. It meets the criteria, so let's kill him. And that's how he fought the global war on terror. So there's, the notion that we should just give the government over to itself and let the bureaucrats run the nation because they're the professionals, right? And this is the language that they use. Well, we ought to just let them do it because they're the person that's been doing it for the last 30 years. They're the professional career civil servant or whatever. But what that ends up being is bureaucratic dictatorship. It's
Those are
ruling.
the people who vote present.
Yeah, there's and so like the ruling party in China is the Chinese Communist Party. So that it is a bureaucracy that runs the nation, and that is not the America that has been around for 250 years, and 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 this is but this is and this is I don't think it's as deep in the Republican Party, but both of the last well, no, yeah, because the younger Bush. So since Herbert Walker Bush, um, the trend has been towards despotism, where one person has absolute totalitarian rule. And whatever that one person says, and you can argue, and this is the argument that the Republicans make. Well, hey, at least Trump is making decisions, and Biden was just allowing his staff to make decisions for him. But in both cases, it was totalitarian rule. It was just either the
Hmm.
totalitarian rule of the individual who's in the office or the totalitarian rule of the bureaucracy established by the party that put that person in office. Um, and so the Democratic Party has absolute rule over the Democratic Party candidates, and uh, the Republican Party candidates have absolute rule over their political party. So nobody in Congress is like, I really think we ought to be giving these guys due process. Does seem to be like does seem to be like an important thing we ought to do. And
Yeah.
there's nobody is saying that. Everybody's like, and for years, we're like, man, I can't believe that we're doing these omnibus bills. This is all bull, and we need to go back to having, every agency needs to have its own budget bill, and we need to vote on it, and we need to allow amendments, and la 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 la. And now what do we want to do? One big beautiful bill. So, and the reason we want to do one big beautiful bill is because that's what the leader wants, dear leader. That's what they call
Yeah.
Kim Jong Un, is dear leader. There's Vladimir Putin is the supreme leader of the Russian Federation. So there's and my concern is less about, how did we get to where we're at, but how do we get back to a place to where um, uh, it's not, our morality, our net is not relative. It's not like, oh well, this is what we think is right now. So since this is what we think it's right now, that's what's right. and there's and that is antithetical. It is antithetical uh, to a government that is founded upon a constitution. There's so ethics. Within the world of ethics, there are objectivists and there are subjectivists. So objectivists are like, oh, okay, well, there are absolute rights and absolute wrongs, and they really fall into two categories. Um, uh, there are people who believe that objective standards for right and wrong are discovered by humans and divine in nature. So the Ten Commandments is a good example of a set of morals that was discovered by humans, but was revealed by a divine being, being God to Moses on the mountain. So and then the other is, oh, okay, well, uh, we have discovered our our standards of morality, and we have enshrined those in a constitution and a set of laws. So that constitution and that set of laws is what defines our values, and the only way that we're going to adjust those values is to go through that process. So like it is not easy to amend the U.S. Constitution. That's by
No.
design. It's not
Right.
supposed to be easy. It's because the Constitution fights against moral relativism, and the only way that you're gonna get an amendment to the Constitution is to make your case before the American people and to make a strong enough case that you're going to get a supermajority, not just in Congress, but you're going to get a supermajority of the representative states to buy off on that thing. But we don't even try to do that anymore. We just throw the Constitution out and pretend that it doesn't exist. So and I'm a little, there's at a loss with how do we move forward. Um, half of me wants to say, well, we need to have another constitutional convention so that the current generation has has a buy-in, has a connection to the Constitution the way that previous generations have had to our original Constitution. Um, because I mean, until the last 50 years, we have, man, we have really, really believed it. I mean, there's people laugh at it, but we allowed the Nazi Party to have a political convention in Madison Square Garden, and nobody was like, yank their permit, man, don't let them do it. And there wasn't, riots and all kinds of people, protesting against the horrible, horrible speech that was taking place inside the Madison Square Garden. They were like, well, that's it's kind of the cost of free speech, and uh, uh, and today, if the American Nazi Party wanted to have a convention in Madison Square Garden, good night. I mean, it would be people. There would literally be riots in the street, um, and so I don't know how we get to a place um, to where there we have some way of saying this is right and this is wrong, and if we can't have some kind of an agreement on what's right and what's wrong, then how do you have an ethic? How do you have a common set of values that governs a
How do you have one
society?
flag we all fly?
Yeah, yeah. I was talking about this. This is so funny. Uh, there's so within the Christian world, there was a council in Nicaea in 325, um, and at this council they decided a bunch of things, right? And so when you're reading what are called the writings of the early church fathers, that's what they're called, the early church fathers, right? So if you're reading their writings prior to that council in Nicaea, it's called they're called the ante-Nicene writings. And if you read any writings after that council, it's called the post-Nicene writings. So it's the same people writing, but if you read the ante-Nicene one, it's just a bunch of arguments, and they're like yelling at each other, and they're like Arius is a traitor to the cause, and he should be burned at the stake. I mean, they're like really, really nasty, nasty writings amongst the church fathers, because there were what we now call heresies, but there are all these ideas, and they're like, well, no, no, no. Jesus really meant this, and Jesus isn't God. He was just kind of like a God, or Jesus wasn't really a man, but he was just
It's just
kind
all
of
the
like
internal debates.
all. That's exactly right. So there's all this yelling, and then they had a council in 325, and all the writings after that, they got in line, and it's like, okay, this is what the faith is. And the Christian faith would not have survived if they would have been if the infighting that was taking place in the ante-Nicene writings just continued. The only way that it was able uh, to become literally the major religion in the entire world, from this tiny little bitty, band of brothers in Judea, was because in Nicaea at that council they said, this is what we're going to do. And now there's a creed called the Nicene Creed, and every Catholic church all around the world recites the Nicene Creed every single mass. There's so and that was in 325. We're still reciting that exact same creed uh, today, and so it's like so there's a common ethic, there's a common value, and and uh, and without that common value, we wouldn't have had a church. And my fear is that without a common value, without something that we believe is more important than being um, politically right, not like actually right. There's so I'll just give one more example, and there's so the first time the word uh, transgender was used um, in the world of psychiatry was in 1965. A professor from Columbia University wrote a paper about transgenderism, and that was the first time, right? And so then in the early 60s, there was a lot of writing going back and forth within um, the world of academic psychology and the world of clinical psychology regarding gender identity.
Okay.
And then in uh, I think it was in the 1970s, it might have been the 1990s, uh, that whole conversation changed. And instead of the conversation being had uh, by psychiatrists and psychologists, it started to be had by activists. And there was a book that was written called The Transgender Warriors. And and so then everything was off, man. And it's so like there are there are theories regarding gender identity, and these are valid theories, and they're important theories, and they're just like just like any other school of psychiatry or any other discipline within the social sciences. um, you're like, oh, okay, well, here is a group of people, and these people are considered narcissists, or here's a group of people, and they are considered whatever it is, right? So it's like serious people having conversations about very serious issues. But then when you give that to political activists, and all they're trying to do
It's
is,
online internet sleuths saying that they know more than you because they have opinions of things they read without any backing.
yeah. So like I can name and I can describe four different um uh theories, four different schools of thought within the world of developmental psychology regarding gender identity and transgenderism. Um but if you just try and have a conversation with people about what gender is,
They're going to tell you
there's
how they
like,
feel about it.
yeah, exactly. And it's not, there's no way that you can um so like there's when and again I always end up going back to faith, but this is where values come from, right? So like there's Genesis 1:27 is this great verse where the Bible says that God created man, and there, it uses mankind uh, as, so it means everybody, um, uh, in his image. And then it says, and he created them male and female. So there's two different things. One, so like mankind can't be reduced. So when we say that God created mankind, it's not like, oh well, that only means Europeans, or that only means Asians, or that only means people of a particular race, or that only means this. That means everybody.
Right.
You can't take one group out, put another group in. You can't. So everybody. But then that second thing that's added was, it was another irreducible quality. So every individual can be reduced, but the entity that they can't be reduced any farther is their sex. So so like a person, if you go all the way down to their chromosomal level, they the only they can be reduced to being a male, or they can be reduced to being a female. Now, what that doesn't necessarily mean that there's only men and women. What that means is that God created mankind in general, and he created men and women in specific. So everybody is included in both of those statements. Everybody is included. It's just that that the creation is generalized, and the creation is individualized. So God created everyone, and God created me. God created everyone, and he created you. And he created every single individual in an irreducible way. So when you think about that, that creates a level of respect for human beings that is irreducible. There I can't I can't take someone and exclude them from my race, because that race is the human race. So I can't say, well, they are a them and I am an us, because the fact of the
We
matter
are a
is,
we. Yeah.
that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
that is an objective standard that guides my ethical decisions. But then the other thing is, it's like, oh, okay, well, now I'm talking to a person, and that person is very different than me. They have different thoughts, they have different desires, they have different opinions, they have different skin colors, they have different eye colors, they have all these differences, right? Well, that same level of dignity comes requires me to not just respect their universality. It requires me to expect to respect their individuality in the same way, if that makes sense. So
It
so
does, and I. Oh, go ahead.
well so the only thing I was going to say, so that's an ethic that that for many millennia was kind of like the driving force of humanity, and I mean, I'll say in the last 150 years that that notion has been upended, and I think we're kind of getting to the point where it's like, man, well, there is, it's not that there is a universality. We there's a The tribes are different, and the tribes are more important than the universality, and and there's, well, anyway, go ahead. There's
Well, I'm just gonna say we're almost 3 hours in, and we're getting into a
who are we?
completely whole realm of another conversation that we can have for another episode. And we need to get to a point where we realized at the beginning of the episode we're not going to have any real conclusion for where the ethics are at in America. And I think that we're just going into another conversation that's going to start another debate altogether. So we should probably end it here, because otherwise this is going to turn into a 5 hour episode easily
Yeah.
that nobody wants to listen to over the course of 3 weeks. So I think we'll have to leave it on the note of we do agree on the fact that there does need to be some kind of standard because neither the left or the right is getting it correct. And I do think that we are moving towards a direction that is very much opposite of what this nation was founded on and what it is that we should be recognizing what these values are, because people are a little bit more individually focused as opposed to collectively focused, and we need to figure out what the collective needs to agree on in order to be able to um, have this ethic that we can move forward to. But we're not coming up with that.
Yeah, so we didn't solve all the world's problems today.
No, not today. Not today, unfortunately. But maybe next week. Maybe next week.
Maybe next week. And if you stayed this long in the through this uh, tirade, I guess there's a we appreciate you getting on, really. And this is, I think that's one of the things that this is a good episode for is this is the heart of family that we just had a homeless shelter in my town shut down, and it was a homeless shelter for youth 12 to 24, and so there's all these 12 to 24-year-old people who were in a shelter that are now not in that shelter anymore. So you think, well, why is a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old person who is not a criminal, right? So they're not in jail, but why do they not have a home? A lot of times it's because there's a disagreement in their family, and their parents won't let them stay at home, or they choose to not live at home because they can't talk with their parents or whatever, and there has to be a way to uh, that's just horrible in my view, that for the notion that a family would rather have a child living on the street than have an honest
Then
conversation
have a
over,
disagreement.
yeah, over dinner. So that's the whole idea behind supper talk. So if you know anybody who has those kinds of relationships, send them our way, because just like we didn't solve everything today, but we did talk. We talked, and we'll talk
We're
again
leaving
next
the
week.
discussion open to be able to continue talking. And I think that
Yeah.
that's another thing that it needs to be recognized is you don't necessarily need to end a conversation with some kind of resolution. It can be an open-ended conversation that you continue having over the course of your relationship because you don't stop being family.
Yeah, and there's that, and it's like the purpose of a conversation isn't victory. The purpose of a
Right.
conversation is engagement.
And learn more about the other person, what makes them them.
Yep. So, if you would like or share this, we would appreciate it. Share it with somebody. If you could leave us a review on Spotify, that would be awesome. Um, but I think that's it for this episode of the Supper Talk podcast. I'm Steve, and I will see you the next time.
Be well, guys.